particularly telling that in the Minister's contribution, at no point did she address any of the areas of this bill where we have expressed our opposition. At no point did she talk about any of the additional testing that's been put in place. She simply addressed issues around the abatement, which we've said that we don't contest. We're in absolute agreement. And in fact, the fact that the Minister has chosen not to talk about those more controversial aspects of this bill, I think, is particularly telling. It does indeed say it all. But I do, before I want to go on to the substantive points of my initial address to this House, want to reflect on some statements that were made previously by Chester Borrows, a member of this House who I have a great deal of respect for, as someone I work with frequently. But I have to say, I don't believe for a second that Mr Borrows actually believed anything that he said during his contribution, because I don't think I need to remind this House who got benefit numbers down to the lowest level in decades. It was Labor. It was Labor that brought down benefit numbers in its last term of government. And I refuse to be lectured by that government about aspiration in that context, because it was this Labor government that brought down benefit numbers. And that government can talk and chant about the pure rhetoric of aspiration. That government may talk about aspiration. We were the ones that made it happen. It's the numbers that matter, and I have seen nothing on that side of the House to demonstrate that their rhetoric has been translated into anything tangible except words. National constantly claims that it believes in this so-called aspiration of equal opportunity. Where is the equal opportunity in being one of 2,700 applicants for one job at Countdown? Where is the equal opportunity in that? There is no aspiration in this bill, there is no dignity in this bill, and there is no opportunity in this bill. And if the Minister would like to refute that when it comes to the work testing elements of this bill, when it comes to what we're doing to sickness beneficiaries, that I would be interested in hearing, because abatement rates we are not disputing on this side of the House. But if nothing else, I have to say I do see that there is some consistency in some of the policies we're seeing being put forward by this national government. There are similar approaches in this bill to what we've seen in national standards. In our primary schools, we're spending significant amounts of money measuring an issue, categorising failure, and not doing much more, and doing nothing on fixing the heart of the problem. And in doing so, we're compounding the issue, is my belief. And again, I welcome members on that side of the House to contest that point if they choose to. And I do agree with the Minister. I do agree that context matters, and that's why it's important that we don't just throw out numbers about how many jobs are being put on the books in WINS. We also need to talk about how many people are going onto the books at WINS. Context matters in this situation, particularly given that we are in a recession, and I refuse to believe that the hardest times have hit us already. We're seeing it truly bite at this particular period, which is why context matters. My interest is if this bill really is about getting folks off the benefit, surely our test should be the impact it would have on the groups who are currently without work and seeking work in particular. Now, there are other elements to the argument, and I look forward to coming back to those around invalids and sickness beneficiaries in particular. But in terms of those who wish to work but are out of work, what impact does this have on them? Because that should be our true test. And in particular, if we are going to talk about that group of people, let's be honest. We're talking about Māori, Pacifica, women and young people, because they are the groups that are the most, have been impacted the most by this recession, and who are manifesting most heavily in our unemployment figures at the moment. So those are the groups that we really should be discussing. And in my view, this bill does absolutely nothing to change the situation that they find themselves in. Which leads to the question over what the real motive is about this bill, but I believe other members on my side have discussed that, the fact that it was a manifesto statement not backed up by evidence or research, but we can go into more detail on that. But clearly it hasn't actually been about jobs. Because if we look at young people in particular, we have experienced a rapid increase in unemployment amongst young people, whilst nationally we're looking across the board, Mr Chair. Thank you, Mr Chair, at a rate of about 6.8% unemployment. In Auckland it's 8.7%, but for young people specifically it's 13.7%. And although we've seen some fluctuation around the younger end of that spectrum, for the 20 to 24s it's gone up 2.6% since the last March quarter measurement. So that's a total of 68,200. Now the Minister talks numbers. 68,000 are the number of young people unemployed we're talking about at the moment. Now all of the initiatives the government have put forward may have been noble attempts, but they are a flash in the pan when we're looking at those numbers. We have 60,000 young people not in employment, education or training. Now the government may add compulsion to its independent youth benefit to be in training, work and education, but that's about 1,500 young people we're talking about. There are 60,000 in total, and most of them not receiving any form of government support getting into work or training or education. And we know the impact of young people lingering on the benefits for long periods of time. The 90s showed us what happens when a young person, for instance, stays on the benefit for 12 months or more, because really that's the first point at which this bill will bite for that young person. According to this bill, which is meant to be assisting people into work, the first thing that will happen for a young person who's been on the unemployment benefit for 12 months is that they'll get an extra work assessment. Not good enough in my book. Not good enough. Firstly, far too late to give genuine assistance, because if that young person is on an unemployment benefit, then naturally you will assume that that young person is lacking the skills needed in our now progressively higher skilled workplace. We're losing our unskilled jobs in New Zealand, and if they lack the skills, if they lack the work experience, simply another work assessment after 12 months of floundering without anything will do very, very little. So what did we say on this side of the House? Well, over a year ago now, when the government undertook its job summit, we decided to specifically look at youth unemployment. And one of the initiatives which we handed to the government to assess was something that the UK is doing. Any young person who is out of work for 12 months or more is guaranteed that if they sign up to work alongside the equivalent of work and income, they will be guaranteed a placement in education, in training or work. Now the government may claim that this is their youth guarantee. Far from it. You've got 2,000 places, according to the government, out of 60,000 who are seeking work. 2,000 placements, and that is often unsupported. There are young people who have not previously done well in education being chucked into politics to tick a box for the government and are failing, or not even filling the placements that exist. And you ask anyone running a polytech institution and that is the story that you will get. These young people are not being supported to succeed in those roles. And what's the second thing that the government did? Well, if you're not coming in through a youth guarantee, you may not be getting in at all, because they have capped places in tertiary education and in our politics. We are turning young people away, and this is a fundamental shift in what has otherwise been a universal policy in New Zealand, that if you make the bar in New Zealand for tertiary education, you will be accepted. The national government by stealth has changed that in New Zealand, has absolutely changed that. Grant Robertson has been campaigning on this fact. Now Mr Joyce may claim that this is not the case, but it absolutely is. And any member of this House who has seen the letter from the University of Canterbury will know that there has been a fundamental shift in the policy of tertiary education in this country, and that minister is entirely responsible for it, and that will be the shame of that government and the legacy that they leave for our young people. And I welcome him to address this House and tell him how I happen to be wrong. So if young people are our measure, as an overrepresented group in the unemployment stats, the first point that this bill assists them is at 12 months of being on an unemployment benefit, and by then we already see the damage that a loss of dignity and loss of employment, loss of skills, loss of building their future will have at that point. So in my mind, that is not just a failure, it is an epic fail. And if we want to look for genuine initiatives to help our young people, we look no further than across the ditch. Unlike us, where they capped the ability to get into tertiary education, they spent billions on skills training and education in Australia because they recognised